Hi there. Welcome to my weekly vlog. Wow, what a ride. Well, I'm a little amazed that I'm here. We changed the clocks last night. The clocks went back an hour. Let's see, spring back, fall forward. Yep, so the clocks were so an hour. And I thought, oh my, I gotta make sure that I get the time right. So it looks like I do have the time right. And if you have the time right, that's amazing. So many people on the day that we change the clocks end up not on their usual schedule. It's like changing the clocks is disorienting. It is for me. I was sure I had to keep looking and I had to keep checking because the time on my computer is accurate because it goes back to you know the computer itself. So welcome, and I wanted to chat a little bit today about what happens when you have a chronic disease like lipedema and what can help and what can actually end up being discouraging. Because yesterday, hi, Marilee. Marilee's here from Pacific Northwest. I'm so glad you made it. Um, so, I want to talk about the discouraging part because it's so much of what I hear where people are contacting me looking for answers, wanting to understand why there's so little about lipedema um, available when you go to see your primary care or when you say, I have pain, and it's not received by your providers. So, and the reason I'm chatting about it is yesterday, Dr. Carmody and I did a Lipedema 101 webinar. So the webinars grew out of um, the community. Always, everything grows out of the community. Somebody said, "Hi, Karen from Michigan. Um, we we always respond, and a couple of different people around the same time said, that they wanted um, they wanted to know more about lipedema, but in more depth. I always give an overview of lipedema, but they wanted it in more depth. And so I talked to Dr. Carmody and we we put something together and we've been doing it every 4 to 6 weeks. And it's mostly for new people. But it's also an important um, overview of all of what makes lipedema different, different from obesity, different from lymphedema. It's its own entity, it's its own thing. And that's the thing that we keep emphasizing for people. So, as we were doing the webinar yesterday, Saturday, um, I kept being struck by my own recollection of growing up with a what was I mean, I really couldn't control it because I didn't know what the hell was going on. I just assumed, like everyone else did, that it was obesity. And it was because I definitely have had and still have issues with obesity. But it's not just that. You know, Having obesity as a diagnosis alone doesn't account for the pain, the swelling, the bruising, the the fatigue, the different issues, the brain fog, the lymphatic issues. There are enough other things going on that being able to understand that makes it easier to begin to peel back the layers of the onions, so to speak, to get to the core. And doing the um, webinar with Dr. Carmody yesterday really brought that home to me. As I listened, Dr. Carmody, okay, he is our medical advisor. And the way he got to be our medical advisor was he was my medical advisor for over 40 years. He was my primary care physician. And I can remember. So not unlike a lot of women who deal with issues, um, I neglected having a primary care doctor. I didn't know of one. A friend of mine, bless her heart, she said, "You got to go to the doctor. You got to get some basic testing done just because." And she said, "Go to this nurse practitioner." So she sent me to this wonderful nurse practitioner. And the nurse practitioner was wonderful. And she did the basic female exams. Um, and at one point, she said to me, "There's a doctor I think that you would be a really good match for, that would be really good for you." And she recommended Dr. Carmody, who was in the same healthcare system in Cambridge, Massachusetts. They were both Harvard affiliated and, you know, very compassionate. Trying to think of the right word. Really compassionate and knowledgeable. And that was Dr. Carmody. So I started to see Dr. Carmody a long time ago. Long, long, long time ago. Is it possible it could have been in the 80s? So, while I probably had lipedema when I first started to see him, it wasn't until it became problematic that we needed to find the answer. Because when I first started to see, I was in abstinent in 12-step Overeaters Anonymous, which meant I ate a low carb um, and very healthy diet. I exercised. I mean, I did all the right things, and it worked to keep things in perspective, to keep my lipedema, which I didn't know I had at the time, under control until my hormones went absolutely out of control, which was perimenopause. So I started perimenopause is a very long, undefined time before, as it says, before menopause. And menopause is when your body stops making room for babies. The eggs are gone. Um, Hi, Lisa. Nice to see you from Iowa. Um, when that happens, then your body stops doing all kinds of things that it does to stay um, always in preparation for pregnancy and birth, which is the purpose of the hormones. It's so complex if you think about it, and yet um, such an amazing, amazing process. I recently did a webinar, not me, I attended on menopause because menopause it just brings so much, and it is probably one of the least understood female transitions because it is a transition. I can remember thinking, my period's going to be done, and thinking that that would be a good thing. When in fact, oh my God, I had a very, very, very difficult perimenopause, um, and long years. Like I want to say 10 or 12 years. That's the interesting thing because during that time, your body is changing, but changing radically, changing from a place where, you're basically fertile to you're not fertile anymore. Um, and it's the whole process of aging gets in place and your skin changes and your, monthly cycles change. I remember, I think I got my period once in a year as I was in the transition. And you're not truly done until you are without a period for over a year. I I'm gonna get an expert in menopause to come and give us a webinar at some point. I've been looking for someone, and I think I might have found someone. She was giving a talk around breast cancer, but I'm gonna ask and see if it's possible she'll come and talk to us. But anyway, it's such an interesting journey because in my own journey, it was at the beginning of perimenopause that the swelling started. Not just swelling, but concentrated uh, swelling that couldn't be controlled, that wouldn't go away. And the bruising, which we often talk about, and I'm like, something is going on. Something is wrong here. So, bringing it to Dr. Carmody when I went through this, well, first of all, I think he wa he was different than most docs because he listened. He honestly tried to figure out what it could be. And so I ended up for a year going through all kinds of tests. Um, and some of them were related to my heart because swelling can be a symptom of heart disease. So they wanted to rule out heart disease. Wait, Marilee says, I wanna talk to what Marilee just put. My lipedema went crazy with menopause. My weight went crazy even though I was eating the same healthy way. Yes, I forgot to say that that was true for me too. I know I was eating the same healthy way because I was eating this low carbohydrate diet and I weighed and measured all of my food. Um, Bright line eating is now that, and that's much more in the mainstream. Um, Bright line eating is based on the 12 steps of Overeaters Anonymous and you're weighing and measuring your food. Hi, Julie. Julie just got here from Camarillo, California. uh, so, in the process of trying to figure it out, Dr. Carmody was an incredibly good partner because he knew a lot. And even though he knew a lot, he he didn't know about lipedema. And he didn't know a lot about lymphatic disorders. But he was willing to work with me, and together we were able to figure it out. It took a couple of years, seriously, a couple of years of all kinds of tests and all kinds of specialists. And after a couple of years of all of that, and the swelling still wouldn't go away. And there were all kinds of symptoms that just kept increasing. That Dr. Carmody and I, well, finally he said, well, we know a lot of what it isn't. They had ruled out all kinds of disorders, but they hadn't found the answer. And so the way that I found the answer for me was Dr. Carmody had prescribed a lymphedema therapist. And so I was going to the lymphedema clinic at what is now Brigham and Women's Faulkner Hospital. They had a good lymphedema clinic. When I tried to find a lymphedema clinic, there really wasn't much here in Boston. And Boston is the epicenter of medicine. We have like big hospitals. We have Massachusetts General Hospital. And Marilee said Brightline was dairy heavy, and she's not into dairy. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You can do it without it, but yeah. So Faulkner, they ended up having a really good lymphatic department. So Dr. Carmody recommended it. I went. I got some support. Still didn't have any answers, but I had some support. And what ended up happening is I just kept doing research and I kept looking for answers. And online, I had read about lipedema, but I just glanced over it because I thought, like so many others, that it was lymphedema. So I went and I had heard about the pneumatic compression devices. They're like the LymphaPress. Anyway, they had one at the clinic, and I asked if it was possible to get a session on it, and so they said sure. So, uh, so for those of you who don't know, it's a pneumatic device, which is like a machine you put on garments. So for this one, you put on a garment that went from your ankles up to your waistline, and it would breathe, it would pump. And so it would automatically pump the fluid, which is the purpose, was to pump the fluid out. And so I went on, which was an hour session, and I asked Melissa, my therapist, if there was anything that I could read about all of this. And she handed me Dr. Foldy's textbook. And when I say a textbook, I'm saying a textbook on lymphatic disorders, lymphatic diseases. The Foldys, Michael and Etelka, were a husband and wife from Germany who had a clinic on lymphatic disorders and mostly treated and did research on lymphedema. Well, there was a chapter in that book on lipedema, and that chapter had photos. It's how I recognized it. I looked at the photos and I went, oh my God, that's what my legs look like. And when Melissa came back in at the end of the hour, I said to Melissa, Melissa, I don't think that what I have is just lymphedema. I think I have lymphedema, but I think it's lipedema. And I had had a session with her a couple weeks before this where I just sobbed and sobbed and sobbed because I was doing everything right. I was doing everything right, and I couldn't seem to impact the volume in my legs, and I just kept gaining weight, even though I wasn't doing anything that would make that happen. In other words, my diet was so clean, and I knew what I was eating. And anyway, so I remember when I said that to her and the look on her face, and she went, "Oh, I think you're right. I think you're right. I think it is lipedema." And that was like the beginning of a huge tsunami. It was a tsunami because I had to really begin to listen to what was going on in my body. And I remember very clearly going home that day and saying again and again and again, "You mean it's not my fault?" I thought it was my fault. I thought I was doing something wrong. I thought for my entire life it was my fault. And the next conversation I had with Dr. Carmody was that day, that night. He called me that night because I had been in the midst of another round of testing at the hospital. I was in the midst of lymphoscintigraphy, which is nuclear medicine imaging of the lymphatic system to see about it. So Dr. Carmody called that night and said to me, well, I had the results of your testing came back, and you have a compromised lymphatic system, which is I have lymphedema. And then I said to him, I think I figured out what's going on. I think I have something called lipedema. And I went into what I had learned and gave him information. And he said to me, "That's wonderful." So I'm telling him that I have a chronic disease that nobody knows about, that has been affecting my entire life and was going to affect it from there on out. And his reaction was, it took me by surprise, and it made me listen, because what he then said was, "We've been trying to find an answer for years now, and it sounds like you've found an answer that we can explore, that we can research, that we can find out more about." And with that, he really partnered with me and began a process where we were able to uncover, as we were doing the Lipedema 101 webinar yesterday. I'm just thinking back to yesterday. I was amazed at what we've learned, at what we've been able to say with certainty that has been being researched, and that we have a way to help me and anyone else who wants to be part of it. You. And that's what's on my mind. That's my wow, what a ride of this week. Is like, being with Dr. Carmody and realizing, oh my God, you've come a long way. We have come a long way. And I'll often say to Dr. Carmody, you know, did all did all that just happen? Should we just go through this for years and years and years, and here we are, and we have something to say that has merit and that can help? And the answer is yes. So I hope you have a good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are. And I will see you again really soon. Many blessings. I am happy to be here with you.